Okay, we'll see if 10 seconds if this red light comes on.
Is this the atomic?
There we go. All right. Everyone ready?
It's only 15 seconds late.
I'd like to call the Monday, March 4, 2019 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge to the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please, Lori?
Mayor Duncan?
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Mrs. Hilton?
Here.
Mr. Epley?
Here.
And may I have a report on the minutes of our February 4 regular session, work session, and our February 25 work session and executive session? Mrs. Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor, I reviewed the minutes from all 4 of those meetings, and I found them to be correct and complete, and therefore I move that they be adopted as written.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, so ordered. Under status reports, we have a lot of citizen volunteer committees that people, Oakwood residents, are serving to help our city. And we have some appointments that I would like to bring to the council tonight for approval. On our Board of Zoning Appeals, this is a 5-year term, and Kip Bohatchee and Linda Weprin have agreed to serve. On our Beautification Committee, it's a 3-year term, and Connie Epley has agreed to serve. On our Personnel Appeals Board, another 3-year term, Jill Kendall has agreed to serve. And then on our Tax, Water and Sewer Assembly Appeals Board, that 3-year term, and Jan Scheid and Ellen Foch have agreed to serve. And then on our Budget Review Committee, this is a 4-year term, and we have people from each of our 7 voting precincts. In Precinct E, Michael Hayes has agreed to serve. In Precinct F, Megan Cavanaugh. And in Precinct D, Kate Botchner. And then finally on our Property Maintenance Board, this is another 5-year term. Kathy Luckett in District A has agreed to serve. We still have a couple of vacancies on the Property Maintenance Board and on the Beautification Committee. I hope to be able to bring those to council next month to fill out all of our citizen committees. So I make a motion that we approve and appoint these folks to these positions, and would ask for a second.
Second.
Any other questions or discussions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, so ordered. I do have a minor status report. I got a note from the Ohio Municipal League last week that said on last Monday, the controlling board in the state of Ohio approved a $2 million temporary transfer to the Ohio Department of Taxation to cover shortages in taxes municipalities received created by taxpayers filing estimated payments to multiple municipalities. These estimated payments were filed to the state via the Ohio Business Gateway as part of the state's centralized collection of municipal income tax or municipal net profit business filings. Taxpayers underestimated payments to some municipalities while overstating payments to others. The Ohio Department of Taxation has estimated 445 municipalities have been shorted as a result. The Ohio Society of CPAs reported on this same issue and described it was unforeseen by the centralized payment process enacted in the last budget bill. Had the Ohio Society of CPAs decided to listen to local governments, we would have said not only was it absolutely foreseen, we could pretty much guarantee that this was going to happen. And the CPAs have said, as the tax year progresses, the businesses will have a better picture of what their annual tax liability will be for each municipality and will adjust subsequently filed declarations to properly reflect its liability. I'll believe that when I see it, and I will keep you apprised as to how the business gateway is doing with centralized collection of municipal income taxes. Thank you for indulging me with that.
Not hold your breath.
And this is now the visitor portion of our meeting, and I see we have some people out here and want to know if they wish to address council at this time. No. All right. Well, if you change your mind, I'll rearrange the agenda for you, okay? You're here for a scouting badge, is that correct? All right. Well, thank you for coming, and you'll enjoy this meeting. It'll be a short one. It is now time. Oh, do we have any other visitors? You folks? All right. So we will close the visitors portion of our meeting, and we'll go immediately to legislation. And Councilmember Stevens has ordinances and resolutions, one right after the other. And I'll turn the floor over to you, Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor Duncan. This is an ordinance to amend existing sections 951.103, 951.117.2, and 951.120.1 of the Oakwood Streets and Public Services Code to clarify requirements for the removal of individual abandoned or topped facilities in the public rights of way. This is the second reading of an ordinance to update the city's regulations for administering public utilities located in city rights of way. There are the rules that must be followed. Now, these are the rules that must be followed by electric, gas, and telephone companies and any other utilities that may have facilities located in the public right-of-way. This ordinance will amend the rules to address so-called, quote, double poles. Double pole situations happen when a utility company installs a new replacement pole but does not remove the original pole within a reasonable time frame. Often, the original pole is cut short or topped but not removed because other utility providers still have facilities on that original pole, and communication among the utility providers is not always optimal. The ordinance would define a reasonable time frame for removing the original pole. When the ordinance was first read, that time frame was defined as 90 days after the pole has been topped or replaced. However, for the second reading, this has been enlarged to 120 days to ensure we are allowing ample time for multiple providers to coordinate work with each other. After the expiration of the 120 days, the city would be authorized to deny permits for other right-of-way work until the pole is removed. This is a second reading of this ordinance, and I move that council adopt it tonight.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any questions or comments for Councilmember Stevens? Hearing none. Lori, would you call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
The floor is yours, sir. Mr. Stevens?
A resolution declaring the necessity of repairing sidewalks and appurtenances thereto on Fowler Boulevard and certain other streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood, Ohio, providing that abutting property owners repair the same. This is an annual resolution that is the first step of our 2019 sidewalk, curb, and driveway apron project. This year's program will cover all streets within the area bounded by Fowler Boulevard, Far Hills Avenue, Patterson Road, Acorn Drive, and Schroyer Road. We are required by law to pass 4 pieces of legislation in order to carry out this program and assess the sidewalk costs. The first piece of this resolution, which declares the necessity of sidewalk repairs in these parts of the city. I will also be introducing as a first reading tonight the second piece, the ordinance to proceed for the project, but we will not vote on that ordinance until our April meeting. After the project concludes, there will be a third piece of legislation, an ordinance to levy assessments for certain sidewalk costs, and then a fourth piece of legislation that specifically states the properties and dollar amounts where assessments shall take place. I move that council adopt this resolution.
Do we have a second?
Second?
For purposes of the scout out here, normally we can pass resolutions at one meeting of council, whereas ordinances generally require us to be read at 2 meetings. So you now know the difference between a resolution and an ordinance. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion for Councilmember Stevens? No. Hearing none. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And Mr. Stevens is back with another ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor Duncan. An ordinance determining to proceed with the repairing of sidewalks and appurtenances thereto on Ford Boulevard and certain other streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood, Ohio, providing that abutting property owners repair the same. This is an annual ordinance that is the second step of our 2019 sidewalk curb and apron project. Again, this year's program will cover all streets within the area bounded by Ford Boulevard, Far Hills Avenue, Patterson Road, Acorn Drive, and Schroyer Road. This is the first reading of this ordinance, so I make no motion at this time.
Thank you. And you have another resolution?
Yes, I do. A resolution declaring the necessity of improving certain streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood by lighting the same with electricity. This is another annual resolution that is the first step of our 2020 street lighting program. Like the sidewalk resolution, we are required by law to pass several pieces of legislation to provide street lighting each year. The first is the resolution declaring the necessity of street lighting throughout the city. I will also be introducing as a first reading tonight the second piece, the quote ordinance to proceed for the project, but we will not vote on that ordinance until our April meeting. The third piece of legislation, an ordinance to levy assessments for certain street light costs, will be introduced as a first reading at our April meeting, followed by a final assessment ordinance to be introduced in July. I move that council adopt this resolution.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Stevens? Hearing none. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
Yes.
And you're back with an ordinance again.
Thank
Back
you.
and forth.
An ordinance determining to proceed with the improvement of certain streets between certain termini in the city of Oakwood, Ohio by lighting the same with electricity. This is an annual ordinance that is the second step of our 2020 street lighting program. It is the ordinance that authorizes the city to proceed with the project. This is the first reading of the ordinance, so I make no motion at this time.
Thank you. And you have yet a final ordinance?
My final.
Your
ordinance.
final ordinance.
Thank you. An ordinance to levy special assessments for the construction or reconstruction of sidewalks and appurtenances thereto in the city of Oakwood, Ohio. This ordinance is the third piece of legislation for last year's sidewalk curb and apron project, authorizing the assessment of the sidewalk repair costs that have not already been paid directly by affected homeowners. This is the first reading of this ordinance, so I make no motion at this time.
Thank you. And then Vice Mayor Byington, he has an ordinance as well.
Yes, Your Honor. This is amending Section 72903, the permit required portion of the Oakwood Business Regulation Code, and that is to clarify permitting procedures for the operation of mobile food trucks vehicles at regular recurring events. At our August 6th meeting last year, Council adopted an ordinance to regulate the operation of mobile food vehicles or food trucks on city streets. A key feature of that ordinance was an event-based permit system, whereby permits are issued for specific events sponsored or hosted by an Oakwood property owner. The system is working well so far. However, representatives of the Oakwood Farmers Market have provided some constructive feedback suggesting ways to streamline the permitting process for their food truck vendors. It's been in their experience each week as they scramble to figure out which vendors are available for the following Saturday, and there are always a few last-minute cancellations. This leaves very little time to assemble and submit permit applications and little time for the city to review them. The ordinance that I'm introducing tonight is an attempt to make the process more efficient for weekly or monthly events like the farmers market. It would revise Section 72903 to include a category for regularly recurring events and would combine each instance of these regularly recurring events within the same calendar year as a single event for permitting process. This will enable the event sponsor to collect and submit permit applications early in the season, which the city can then review and generate a list of approved vendors. The farmers market will then be free to schedule whichever approved vendors are available in a given week without having to compile a permit packet at the very last minute. This is a first reading of this particular ordinance, so I am not making a motion at this time.
Thank you. I believe that our scout in attendance will probably need to attend our next month's meeting on April 1st to find out how all this turned out.
Edge of your
I don't know if we can make that a requirement of his obtaining the badge or not. But, all right. Well, again, thank you. That concludes our legislation tonight. We do have a staff report from our public safety department, and Chief Alan Hill is here to present. Welcome, Chief. Good forward to see you.
Mayor, Council, Bob, just going to cover a couple things from last year, some other items we have going on in the department, crime stats, some EMS trends, some personnel changes since I last spoke to you, and then a couple community outreach programs. With that being said, our Part 1 in our major crimes, 2017 versus 2018 comparison. Overall, we were slightly up. I'm going to talk here in subsequent slides about that, but it primarily surrounds our theft offenses. From last year to this year, where we saw an increase from 52 to 69. I'll address this in a little bit more in a subsequent slide. Just a couple other statistics to point out. There for a period of time when we forgery, fraud, and counterfeiting under other major crimes, there was a period of time in previous years, 2014, 15, and 16, where that number has been as high as in the 40s. And predominantly, those are identity theft reports. And I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a significant decrease in those reporting offense, and I think it's because everybody's becoming a little bit more protective of their information, and they're watching it more closely and they're monitoring it, and I think that's reflective in our stats from previous years. When we look at an overall comparison since 2011 of our Part 1 in our major crimes, as you can see, for 4 years in a row now, 15, 16, 17, and 18, we do have a pretty good decrease in overall number of crimes occurring within our community versus previous years. In any given year, because these statistics are amazing. To have a community as densely populated as ours, 3,800 residents, and to be addressing you guys and having less than 80 Part 1 crimes within a calendar year, and when we add major crimes, to have under 111 total for an entire calendar year, I think is pretty impressive for any community, let alone, as I mentioned, one as densely as populated as ours. And when you look at the overall statistics, where we've been as high as 160 and 170, and now we're right around 100, I think it shows what we're doing is effective in the community. Whether it's education, prevention as far as removing valuables from your car, locking your doors, locking your windows, or our quick response has really helped us, especially this year, in catching people. And this isn't the first year that has occurred. So I think it's something as a department, when we look at these numbers and we see where we are, we're pretty proud of them. Overall burglaries, when you look at this chart from 2011 and you compare it to the last 2 years, if there was ever a stat, crime stat that I would be okay with 100% increase in 1 year, it would be this one. Going from 1 burglary to 2 from 2017 and 2018. As I just mentioned, you guys are aware, our council's aware that, 3,800 residences, and we've had 3 burglaries 2 years combined. If you go back to 2011, where we had 29, that was one individual, Sean Upchurch, who we ended up catching on Easter Sunday. And when I was just mentioning ago about our total number of statistics of crimes within a year, 1 or 2 individuals can greatly affect what our crime statistics do look like for 1 year. I want to point out we had 2 burglaries this year, 1 last year in 17, and we were able to solve all 3 of them. So I think that's an important statistic to point out. So I think, like I said, those are outstanding numbers. In 2018, we did experience a 32% increase in reported larceny offenses. This was primarily the result of 2 individuals breaking into vehicles. These individuals were arrested. I addressed council in previous meetings to report those arrests, and they were charged with multiple offenses. This resulted in a theft clearance rate of almost 90%, which is extremely high, especially when you compare that to the national average of 22%. You know, although we did experience an increase, and we had 69 total theft offenses for the 2018 calendar year, we solved 62 of them. That's an incredible job by the men and women that patrol these streets every day. Detective Yant doing the follow-up investigation and the quick response. And, you know, catching 2 individuals almost immediately after committing the acts it accounts for many of these clearances. Because typically when we catch one person, we're able to solve multiple crimes. Medic runs. We did experience a decrease in medic runs from not just 2017, but if you look at 2014, 15, and 16 as well. That's not always a bad thing, having less medic runs. It's less people that need EMS care and get transported to the hospital for a medical emergency. So, you know, one statistic to point out, mutual aid provided, it continues to be a higher number than what it was if you go back to 2014 and 15, where it was 13 times we were requested for mutual aid in 14, and in 15 it was 30. If you look at the last 3 years, it's been as high as 70 and 50, and this year was about 40. So pretty significant, you know, number for us, the amount of times we're called to respond to other agencies, especially when you compare that to the next slide on how many times we request other agencies to respond to us. If you look at the 2014 to 2018 numbers for the last 2 years, 2017 and 2018, we've been able to handle every single emergency medical request within our city. There is a number that stands out on this chart, and that's 2015. It's just kind of an anomaly, you know, given the nature of what we do as far as our calls for service are very unpredictable. You can't control when the next alarm's going to come in. And, you know, right after this statistic appeared on our stats in 2016, we checked it for the validity of it, because when you go back the last decade, you don't typically see a number as high as this. But in that particular case, we were actually on our own medic run within Oakwood and received a second run, and that was the reason for why 2015 was so high. But if you look at the last 3 years combined, there's only been one incident where we've had to request mutual aid come in. So I think that's another statistics for us. You know, our availability to our citizens is critical, and I think this shows when they call us, we're responding. Traffic statistics. The statistic that I would like to point out on this chart that I think is most interest is our accidents. If you look at 2014, 15, 16, and 17, you know, we've been in the 180, 185 average for the year. And last year we saw a 37% reduction in total traffic accidents, and the lowest number in the last 5 years, and it actually extends beyond that as well to 115 total accidents for the year. You know, Schroyer Road is definitely part of this statistic in reduction. You know, in 2014, 15, and 16, before the road diet was implemented, we averaged about 19 crashes a year on Schroyer Road. Last year in 2018, we only had 12. When you look at that number, you don't think that's a huge statistic, but when you, percentage-wise, it is. It's almost a 40% decrease in crashes on one roadway. I know the city manager has addressed council before and talked about the reduction of the 85th percentile speed. So when we talk about the road diet and is it working, you know, it reduced the 85th percentile speed, I believe, by up to 7 miles an hour. And then now we're seeing about a 35 to 37% reduction in crashes as well. So from a public safety standpoint, that's an outstanding statistic. Overtime hours, from 2012 to 2018, you can see we try to be pretty consistent. We can't control extended absences, sudden illnesses, and that type of thing within the department, but we've been hovering right around that 4,000 hour for the department range for the year, and we have a 7-year average of about 3,884 hours per year. I think it's important when you compare that against the next chart. There was a period of time from 2015 to 2011 where the average was just over 5,000 hours. So, I mean, what does that equate to? It equates to about a 23% reduction in overtime hours over those 7-year periods, which saves the city about $50,000 in overtime. You know, just being a little bit more diligent in how you manage the schedule, you know, with controlling gaps in the schedule and things like that, that have really accounted for that. So I think it's something we've been consistently able to hold for the last 7 years, and you know, our goal is to keep it that going forward. Personnel changes. Since I last spoke or addressed council in August, we lost Public Safety Officer Brian Shaw. On September 16th, Officer Shaw resigned to accept a position with the Mason Fire Department. He left the Public Safety Service and went back to a traditional fire department, which is where Officer Shaw came from. Brian did an excellent job serving the city of Oakwood during his tenure while he was here, and we wish him well. Public Safety Officer Bruce Upchurch on October 28th retired with over 27 years of public service, of which 11 was with the city of Oakwood. We wish Bruce well in retirement. This one kind of is significant to me because I was hired with the city, with Bruce at the same time when we came from our respective agencies to the city of Oakwood, and it's just hard for me to sit here and as someone I was hired with is now retired. I often don't view myself as the old guy, and then I sit in a room and I quickly realize I am the old guy. So, you know, and this reminds me of that right here. With 2 people leaving, we have 2 great additions. In January, I know you met both through their swearing ins, but for anybody at home who did not see any of that, we hired Officer Wells in October. Officer Wells came to us from the Waynesville Police Department with over 5 years of experience. He recently completed both the Fire Academy and EMT school, and he's in the final stages of completing his field training program, and will be out on his own serving the residents of this community very soon. The second addition was Officer Chris Sloan, not to be confused with Justin Sloan, his brother. Chris came to us from the Mason Fire Department, or Mason Police Department. Prior to that, he served with the City of Fairborn Fire Department, so he has a tremendous amount of fully consolidated public safety experience when you take a 12-year career as a firefighter, paramedic, and 5 years full-time as a police officer. So, you know, Chris is an excellent addition as well. When I addressed council with my last staff report in August, we were about a month away from the start of our first Citizens Police Academy. And I'm proud to report on November 14th, the first academy graduated, and we completed the first academy in November. The CPA was well received by both the participants and the officers who instructed throughout the academy. I think it was a good mix of people from within the community, and then we actually had one full-time employee who did not live in the city, but she's a full-time employee within the community that attended as well. So I think it was a good mix of participants, and I know the officers who were involved in this thoroughly enjoyed it. Just a reminder, because we plan to host our second one this year, the Citizens Police Academy is free of charge. It's open to anybody who either resides within or works full-time within the city of Oakwood. The next Citizens Police Academy is scheduled to start in September of 19, and we will begin accepting applications in June. We're very excited again, and this has been a tremendous platform for us as safety officers to interact with the residents we serve. Currently, the newest, I guess, public safety initiative as far as programs for the community, it's on March 1st, we implemented a program entitled ACORN. It's short for Assisting and Contributing to Oakwood Resident Needs. This program is going to focus on elderly and at-risk population within the community. is designed to assist residents during times of emergency, provide peace of mind through proactive community outreach, as well as implementing safety plans and being an advocate for them when we can. As we go throughout our day-to-day travels within the community, these two groups right here are the ones we probably have the least interaction with because they're not out and about. The majority of the community, sometimes they're not able to get around, and they're more they stay within their homes and they don't have all the outreach and the interaction with maybe us as we do with the other members of the community. So some of the benefits from this program include periodic wellness visits from the safety department, us just checking up on them, make sure they don't need anything and everything's okay. Procedures for the Oakwood public safety officers to have secure access to their resident in the event of emergency, which is a key. And up-to-date medical information form. If we respond to somebody's house and they're unresponsive and they can't communicate and they have some significant medical issues, that's a critical component for us in providing that initial patient care when we get on the scene. And finally, a partnership with the Wright Memorial Library Book Delivery Program. You know, many of our elderly, assistant, at-risk populations like to read, and they're not able to get there, to get to the library. So, you know, we're going to partner with them and hopefully, you know, provide that need for anybody who wants it. The ACORN program is free of charge. It is designed and intended for residents who are 65 years older, living alone, and have limited contact with caregivers. The goal of this program is just to work in partnership with senior and at-risk citizens to better address their needs, but most importantly, improve their quality of life within the community. And that's what it's about. And for anybody at home to register, all you have to do is, or to enroll, just contact the safety department and arrange for a home visit. And on top of that, if you know somebody who you think could be a candidate for this program, if you go to our city website, there is an enrollment form that maybe you can print off for them and talk to them as well if they're not aware about the program. Officer Bollinger has been critical in the implementation of this, and I'm happy to report to you she's already made contact with a couple residences and will be scheduling in-home visits here within the week to get this program officially up and running here very soon. I guess the final thing is last Friday was the biennial chili cook-off for the city of Oakwood. It's a great event. Brings us all together from all the departments.
Chief's getting ready to boast here, so just prepare yourselves.
So I'm happy to report to council it was almost a clean sweep for the safety department. Captain Mike Jones took first place overall in the chili department. Third place went to Crew 1. So thanks for Crew 1 for whipping something up. And then Captain Przinski took first place in the dessert. So if you're ever offered chili or dessert from the safety department, you're probably in good hands. So I'm proud of the way they represented the department.
Well, that's great. I did talk to one of the judges from Dorothy Lane Market, and he said that our law director's chili wasn't really chili. But it was outstanding. It wasn't traditional chili. Okay, so we may have to get a legal ruling for the chili cook-off. We do that every other year? Is that
Every
correct?
other year.
Okay, great.
They have to be fair and square.
Any other questions for Chief?
Yeah, I have a few things. Chief, we'll start with speeding. The crashes are down on Schroyer, you said 37%.
Correct.
Do you have a ballpark figure on the number of tickets on Schroyer that we've decreased by?
It's been significant. 2016, the last year that Schroyer Road was that 4-lane raceway,
Okay.
you know.
I call it runway, right.
There were approximately 235, 36 citations written. In 2018, that number decreased to 35, 36.
Oh,
It was almost percentage-wise, it wipes it out. I think we all know from traveling that road, I think prior to the road diet, as we were traveling northbound, southbound on Schroyer, you could easily find yourself going 45 miles an hour and you were in the normal flow of traffic. I think today, if you get on Schroyer Road and you're driving 40 to 42 miles an hour, you can feel like you are driving too fast for the roadway design, and it naturally slows you down. The opportunities for enforcement as it relates to the significant speed violations, although you're always going to have those isolated occurrences, it's nowhere near from a public safety and an enforcement standpoint the way it was for us prior to that road diet.
No, that's fabulous.
No,
200,
it's
approximately 200 less tickets. That's
absolutely.
That's fabulous news. Thank you. On that same topic, the mobile, I'm calling it a mobile speed monitor.
Yes.
You know what I'm referring to.
Yes.
We're still using that year round?
The radar sign.
The radar
Street
sign,
Smart
thank you. I haven't
radar
seen it
sign.
recently, so I'm just curious.
It's in the 300 block of Clarion.
Which I've not been
Yeah,
on the 300 block of
it's
Clarion
in the
recently.
300
All right,
block
so you're
of
just,
Clarion.
it's still being actively used and,
The tool's been invaluable for us because of when we receive a speeding complaint, we're immediately able to place the sign at that location, and we're able to extract all that data immediately to identify when to allocate our resources. I don't want to say if in fact we have a problem. Sometimes, you know, perception may not equal speed. Somebody said that car's flying, and then you find out the car's traveling 27 miles an hour and a 25. It just looks like it's traveling at excessive speed. So for us, the biggest thing we can do is deploy that sign. We can get that data, and we can see the peak periods in which the cars are traveling as far as the number of vehicles, and we can deploy our resources more effectively. So yeah, we continuing ongoing.
okay. On the first graph you put up, the narcotics.
Yes.
Is that, I noted it was 12 and 17, 13 and 18, not commenting on the number there, but curiosity is that a combination of maybe a car we've pulled over, we've discovered narcotics, a house arrest, does it include overdoses? Where does that narcotic number come from?
Primarily, those are arrests that are stemming from traffic stops.
Traffic stops.
Or some type of encounter we have with somebody where we find narcotics on them.
On them or in their
on
car,
them.
okay.
There are provisions written within the law for overdoses, not to criminally charge, but to treat. Anybody who sustains an overdose, if they follow guidelines or steps that have been outlined within the law, it's geared towards treatment versus criminal conviction.
Not charging.
So
okay.
those arrests that we see there are primarily us encountering somebody on a traffic stop, somebody on a person-to-person contact, where we're finding some type of drugs on them.
Excellent. And last question, the ACORN program, are all PSOs going to be involved in, home visits, or is it only certain ones is there any training?
Yeah, we've identified right now, we've identified one person, Officer Bollinger, who's who's been spearheading this.
She'll coordinate it, right?
She's coordinated
Right.
under the guidance of Captain Przinski, and then we're going to have one additional PSO for a public safety officer assigned to every crew that's going to assist with the home visits.
Okay.
And depending on the total volume of people we get, if we need to include more, we will.
So one per crew, so 3 additional.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And plus Officer Bollinger plus Captain Przinski.
Correct, yeah.
So we'll have about 5 total initially, actively engaged in this.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you for that presentation, and tell all your public safety officers, well done. That's a very, very good numbers to see. That's great. Thank you.
Appreciate
Any
it.
other questions for the chief? All right, I would echo that. It's a great department, and that's one of the reasons people want to live in Oakwood. It's the safest community in the Miami Valley, so we appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for our city manager's report.
Your Honor, I have a few quick things this evening. First item is this week we're going to be posting our 2019 city budget to the website. So citizens that would like to dig deep into our city budget, they'll be able to do that. And it's, as you well know, it's 130 some pages, a lot of numbers, but there's also a lot of other information in there. There's our capital improvement plan towards the back of the document. My city manager budget message towards the front of the document, which is about 5 pages of text that really gives a synopsis of our financial situation. And anyway, it's I think a good solid document full of valuable information. So just want to point that out. It'll be on the website. And kudos to Cindy Stafford again and her staff for all the work in putting that together. Another thing we're just finishing up now is our annual report. This is for 2018, and big kudos to Lori at the end of the dais here for many hours of gathering data, putting it together, and proofreading and all that. So thank you for all that. We're just putting the finishing touches to it. It goes to the printer in about a week, and it will be delivered along with the next edition of the OCC brochure right at the end of March. So every property owner in Oakwood and every business will get the annual report. And that's 32 pages worth of statistics, data, and all this from the 2018 calendar year here. We've now had about 4 months of watching the parking lot perform, I'll say, at the OCC, and everything is working beautifully. And I think it's just been a wonderful addition there. You can definitely notice a change in the parking habits along Patterson, which is a good thing. Many fewer vehicles parked on Patterson, and I think all the folks that use the OCC really appreciate the convenience of having 25 spaces very close there, particularly during these winter months. So that's been a big success. And while I'm talking about the OCC, believe it or not, I mean, you wouldn't think it with the weather today, but we are starting the process of preparing our pool for the opening Labor Day weekend, or Memorial Day weekend. And so kudos to Carol and Karen Early in particular, our program supervisor who takes care of all that. And then also on our website, we recently posted a one-page paper that describes the different methods in which we communicate with our citizens. And of course, we have the bi-monthly Oakwood Scene newsletter. We have the website. We use the Oakwood Register through press releases, the Dayton Daily News. But we also have a Facebook account, which is used primarily through the OCC, although Lori has the capability here at the city building of posting something. And then we have a telephone notification system. It's called Code Red. And what's important about the Code Red system is that we can, depending on what sort of a message we have or emergency we may have, we can select a geographic area of Oakwood on a computer screen and then pre-record a single message and then push a button, and that message then is sent out to whether it be 5, 10, 15, or 200, property owners that have their phone in the database. And the key part here is that the Code Red system automatically includes all of the landline phones. But of course, as we all know, more and more of us are cutting those and just relying on cell phones. And so for the Code Red system to include cell phones, individual citizens have to register those numbers. And there's a link on our website or information on our website on how that's done. It's a very simple process. So just want to point that out. And one last item, we are updating and greatly improving the technology in regard to bill paying. And there's a paragraph again on our website right now about that, and over the next few weeks the finance department will be rolling out this new program, and it'll offer different opportunities for bill paying. If you happen to be traveling other side of the country and you realize your water bill's due, you would be able to log into a site and remotely from a smartphone pay your bill and not have to worry about that when you come back. So that's just one example, but there'll be several other parts of that which are all designed to make it more convenient for citizens to pay their monthly utility bills and even tax bills and other things like that. So that's all I have.
Any questions for the city manager?
Actually, one more thing, and I defer my last minute or two to our law director, who has a Boy Scout
Ah, good.
Thank you. Mayor Duncan and members of council, I think you're aware that when I'm not here working for the city, I often do some volunteering with the local Boy Scouts. And we have one in the audience here tonight. I did not prearrange this, I promise. Boy Scouts here in Miami Valley Council once a year do a project called Scouting for Food. It's a food drive for non-perishable items. And you may see them in the springtime. About this time of year, they'll usually come around on a Saturday and hang little plastic bags on people's doorknobs. And they come back a week later and pick up whatever canned goods you've left out for them. That's a large food drive, but this year they want to make it even bigger to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the Miami Valley Council. The Miami Valley Council is the local scouting organization that covers not only Montgomery County, but Miami, Shelby, Darke, and Preble counties. And the goal is to raise, I think that this is the 101st year of the council now with the anniversary, and the goal is to raise 101,000 pounds of food. So in addition to the door-to-door drive that you will undoubtedly see, they have asked local places throughout the community to host collection boxes. And we here at the city have agreed to host one out here in the lobby, it's already in place, and one over at the Oakwood Community Center where residents can stop by and drop off any canned goods that they would like to donate for scouting for food. The boxes will be in place from today, March 4th, through Friday, March the 22nd. And anything that's collected is going to benefit the food bank, which then also distributes it to other local food banks. This is sponsored in part by DP&L, so I should mention that. And it's done in partnership with the food bank and the Hall Hunger Initiative. So I would encourage residents who may be watching, if you have any extra cans of tuna, ramen noodles, what have you, anything non-perishable, feel free to bring it up here to City Hall or to the community center and drop it off in the collection box.
Great. Thank you for that informative report. Any other questions for our city manager or our law director? Then we will go to council comments. Councilmember Epley.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no comments tonight.
Councilmember Hilton.
Your Honor, I have no comments tonight.
Councilmember Stevens.
Just one thing, one of our favorite events is coming up as a collective council. The new resident breakfast will be Saturday, March 16th, 9 a.m. at the OCC, and we always look forward to that. We invite all of our new citizens who have moved in the past year. Do we have a number yet, approximately, on how many are attending this year?
We expect 100 again.
At least, usually right around 100 is our number, and we always look forward to that. So make sure if you are a new resident that you try to attend that, and if you, for some reason, if you moved in the last year and you were not notified, please reach out to us, and we'll make sure you get on the list. It's a real nice breakfast on Saturday, March 16th, 9 a.m. at the OCC.
I believe one of our new residents is the city manager of Moraine.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? And he's planning on attending.
I hope so.
All right. Vice Mayor Byington, any comments?
No comments.
I would like to congratulate the Wright State University men's and women's basketball team, both of who won their conference or their conference championship. The conference tournament starts tomorrow at Wright State. The women, who finished 16-2 in their league, play at 5:30, followed by the men, who finished, I believe, 13-5. And if they win tomorrow, they will both go to Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, Michigan. That's where the Detroit Pistons play. There would be a semifinal game on Monday the 11th, and the championship would be on Tuesday the 12th. That one will be on ESPN for sure. The others are on some lower platforms that you have to pay $5 a month to watch, which I do. And we look forward to rooting the Raiders home to hopefully have a second in a row NCAA tournament for the men. And if we are unsuccessful, both will at least receive an NIT automatic bid. So let's go to the NCAA, and Raider Nation is alive and well. We are adjourned until our next meeting on April 1st, April Fool's Day.